And we're very fortunate to have the moderator of this event visiting us from a long distance, Katya Laszlo. Katya is an international educator, organizational consultant, and leadership coach. She got her PhD in human science from Saybrook University, is a Fulbright scholar from Mexico. Katya is now writing a book on intentional communities and what makes them work. Auroville is one of her subjects. So without further ado, I turn it over to Katya to introduce this session.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to moderate this panel, and this is an opportunity that happened really recently, like 2 days ago. I think 3 just met 2 days ago. So yeah, as it was mentioned, I'm doing some research on basically the evolution of culture and what's happening in different either organizations or communities around the world to really start harvesting the perils of wisdom of what can we learn to really scale and to bring more awareness for other places that are looking to create more sustainable,
I think it's
thriving.
turned off probably, but is it turned off?
No. It was just creating some feedback.
Okay.
Yeah. And definitely Auroville is one of those places that has some amazing pearls of wisdom. And so one of my motivations to say yes to this panel was, I get to learn more about it because I have never visited it. But I'm going to have the opportunity to go later this year in November. So this is a wonderful introduction for me as I facilitate some dialogue. So let me introduce our 2 panelists. So first is going to be Bindu, who I believe she's been speaking before in this conference. Bindu is going to be sharing some of her personal experience and research because as a writer, educator, and sustainability consultant, she has been working with Auroville in aspects related to rural development, waste management, food security, and governance. And Dr. Saro Mestetti, who has also been a resident of Auroville for 30 years. And part of his work has been in development work, project management, urban-rural integration, town planning, and relations with external agencies. And he has a background in South Asia history and economic cooperation with developing countries. So again, we have the opportunity to listen to the perspectives of both experts in the field, but also people that are living through this social experiment called Auroville. So who is going to begin? Bindu or sorry?
Bindu.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm smiling because I see 90% of the audiences that Ashish said is already know so much about Auroville. But to honor the people of the land where Auroville is raised, Vanakkam everyone. That's like speaking for today, Vanakkam. One of the things about me, which is not on my bio, but if some of you know, is that I am also a graduate from the East-West Psychology program from CIS. So actually, I really see myself as a living bridge between these 2 institutions, CIS and Auroville. And as Mike Hebel said in his opening statements on the first day, it's very, very amazing that both of these places not only are born in the 68 from the counterculture revolutionary movement, but are also really founded on Sri Aurobindo's evolutionary philosophy. And so yes, this is actually my second home after Auroville. And what I really like is also, if you think about it, the two places are almost like polar opposites. We have 12.5 hour difference. So it's like between CIS and Auroville, we encircle the Earth. So I title my talk From Revolution to Evolution because, as has been mentioned earlier in this conference, we at Auroville are looking how to channel the revolutionary energy of 1968 into sustained evolutionary energy. And Sri Aurobindo and the mother being a spiritual collaborator, they were not thinking in terms of setting up universities, they were not thinking in terms of setting up cities. They wanted to transform humanity, they wanted to transform the world, they wanted to transform matter itself. And these are absolutely revolutionary ideas. And but as we all know, Auroville was founded in '68, and naturally it was pioneered by hippies. Those are the early pioneers of. Looks very much like the Morning Star pictures we saw yesterday. But let me shift gears a bit and share a quote with you from Ralph Waldo Emerson. I'll just give you a moment to read it. So the reason why I wanted to bring in Ralph Waldo Emerson is, of course, I think we're trying to revisit, as we revisit what 1968 counterculture movement achieved, we also have to see what is the trajectory forward. We have to see what's there for the future. And the other thing which I mentioned yesterday was, I really think that the world is in such a planetary crisis, we should not be thinking anymore in these dichotomies of East and West, and North or South, USA, India, but take all perspectives from different wisdom traditions to see how we can move forward with the global planetary culture. I'm sorry. So my presentation is an overview of Auroville through the 50 years. I think 50 years is a nice span of time to actually study what happens to a society, to learn from it. What are the mistakes, what are the failings, what are its inspiration. So I will just take you through Auroville almost decade by decade. But a very quick look at Auroville. This is Auroville in the early days. This is Auroville today. A lot changes in 50 years. Just to go back to how we started, if you take a look at those pictures, especially the top one there, that's how eroded the landscape was, for miles and miles all around. And the villages were really so impoverished. And not only that, but there were also, when Aurovillians moved in, there were feudalistic, exploitative labor practices prevalent there. And a caste system, a very hierarchical caste system which is still enforced. And these hippie Westerners, actually without even wanting to consciously do so, just by the presence were completely creating a revolution in these conditions. Mostly for the better, because always there's a bit of a clash of cultures. And I believe I made this point before, but I find it so amazing that the mother chose such conditions to build a futuristic city, And symbolically what it means is, for any city, quote unquote, which has got this ambitious mission to somehow help solve the world problems, has to work with the problems of the world, which is environmental degradation and social inequality, poverty. Yeah, so that's what Auroville is about. Today, Auroville is a bustling city, 2,500 residents, but so many more, thousands of people, students, interns, visitors who visit us each year. We have a very famous meditation chamber. I say famous because it's become a big tourist attraction, the Matra Mandir that you see gleaming as a gold disc back there. Futuristic looking houses increasingly, as you see with that white terrace. Cafes, boutiques, and also very culturally vibrant. That is a scene from the woman there she's wearing like discarded CDs. So you might mention this, we have an annual trashing show, make fashion out of trash, which is very popular. But there's so many cultural events. I mean, those of us who live there hardly ever manage to go to everything. So, the first, oh Shana, please, no. Seriously. Okay. So when we started out in 1968, it was really the necessity of the times to immediately work in saving the environment. There was no running water, no infrastructure, no houses. People had to put all of this with their own personal investment. And so this phase of Auroville, right up to 84, I would say is akin to what you'd see in an agricultural society in the historic evolution of human societies. And a couple more things about this. I would like to take back a statement that I made yesterday because I hope it wasn't hurtful or blasphemous for some of you. I said that the mother, when she passed away in 73, I said actually that was a great thing. And I did not mean that to hurt anybody. What I meant was, it's like the Zen Buddha thing. If you meet the Buddha, kill him, And for me, it was like what the need of the hour is really to deepen our own subjective. If we want to get to the state of what I'm calling post-secular spirituality, I really think no matter who our inspiration has been, and believe me, Shobhan and the mother, I really consider them as gurus because I've been with their teaching since I was a child. But no matter which texts you've been inspired by, who are the people you're inspired by, it's really a question of finding your own, and Shobhan would say that, your own inner guide. So for instance, in that context of looking this. Also, one last tangential note about Auroville's history during this time. So after the mother passed away, as was mentioned again yesterday, it was when the government of India stepped in to actually save the project. Otherwise, Auroville could have easily disintegrated at that point. And since then, we have an Auroville Foundation Act. Sorry, one more thing. Let me just go back. So in this time, there were only about maybe 200, 300 people. And because the community was so small, people had a very strong sense of a collective shared economy. They actually would put all their money into one pot and share it, or there was a different kind system. And during those years after, the difficult years after the mother passed away, the funding was actually stopped. We used to get funds from Shobhan Society and that was stopped, so it was a very difficult period. And as a result of that, people had to find ways to become economically independent. So that led us to a period of handicrafts, industrial activities, training rural women, employing them to make handicrafts. So this period from, let's say, roughly from 84 to 98, I see it very similar to what would happen to a human society. From an agricultural stage, you move to an industrial stage. A couple of quick things. Handicrafts is of course very easy to get into. But that last picture there is the metal workshop. It started in the very early years of Auroville. And this workshop, Orica, since the beginning actually makes windmills, makes different machines for building it. And I mentioned this, one of the Auroville products which goes out to the world and which goes out to Africa is a windmill called AV55. I don't know whether they went through 55 models before they made the perfect one, but it is India's best-selling windmill most efficient windmill for pumping water out of medium depths. Similarly, Auroville actually is also known in India for manufacturing the first computers. So it was a German Aurovillian. He just brought a computer back from Germany. They disassembled it and they learned how to make the parts and started to manufacture and sell computers. So what I'm saying is there was so much creativity that still continues in Auroville from these entrepreneur days. The next phase from 1998 to 2008, I see as being the informational age where you start to use information actually as a commodity to generate income. And that is one aspect of it. The second aspect of it, during this phase, you also start seeing institutions of higher learning, for adult learning. That's a picture from Savitri Bhavan, where we teach children's classes. And lastly, also interesting, in 2002, we set up the last picture. That is our very interactive internal bulletin board called AuroNet. That really gives us the sense of participatory democracy where anybody can comment on anything or start a post and people will start coming. So that adds a virtual dimension to our very real community. The last decade, 2008 to 2018. For many of us old-timers, I've been there for 25 years now, we feel that maybe things are stagnating a bit. The population growth is probably, I know the economic growth has just been 2% and population growth is probably similar. And as was also mentioned, sometimes we feel that people who come to Auroville these days no longer have that revolutionary passion. They're just coming to retire, to have an easy life and so on. So, but when I thought about it, what is good about this period, and I realized that what is amazing is what is the growth of social entrepreneurship. Is it echoing too much? Should I move out? Is it okay? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, okay. And social entrepreneurship, I don't know how prevalent it is in the US today, but it's come out very big in India, where businesses no longer just have the profit motive, but have a motive to serve society. And there are many, many examples of this, starting from the picture on the bottom. There is this unit called EcoFem, which sells reusable sanitary cloth pads for female menstrual hygiene. And they have the ethic that for every sanitary napkin that they sell, there's a wide international market, but for every pad they sell in the West, they donate a free pad to an adolescent girl or woman. Not only that, they also educate the women around it. It comes with a package. And their growth model is very unusual. It doesn't follow any known trajectories. So much, it really is based on values, who they connect with, who they partner with. And now this has become a case study in a prominent the prominent Indian business school of how they grow. The other pictures, the next one is Auroville's Earth Unit, also internationally known for its research and workshops on appropriate building technology using earth. And the last one, you see another guy, Ripu, who was born and brought up in Auroville, who is taking Auroville kids to interact with rag pickers at a dump site. Because those of you who have been to India know that waste management is one of our biggest challenges. So to make people conscious at this basic level, this is what your lifestyle creates. And you know, there's no such, when you throw something away, there's no such thing as away. Because in the end, there are issues of human social injustice and environmental injustice. So these are some of the social entrepreneurs that I'm proud of. Maybe one way to look at it from an integral yoga or Aurovillean perspective is business has got this vital energies of ambition, power, profit, success. But when you start to temper it with values of caring for others, caring for the environment, then I think we're trying to slowly change businesses. To me, it's a very evolutionary, hopeful movement. Let me see what's next. Okay, so my basic point was, just a second, let me get the page straight. So I basically mentioned this. Human societies go from agriculture, I skipped the part about hunter-gatherer societies, but let's say they go from agricultural societies to industrial societies to informational societies. And I pause here because informational societies, I think the term needs to be expanded a bit. Sorry, let me even backtrack. I think sociologists are in tandem, in consensus, that the history of human societies goes from hunter-gatherers, a society which is mostly extinct now, I believe, in the world, to agricultural societies, to industrial societies. Then people posit a post-industrial society. Some call it informational society, some call it knowledge societies. But I think the thing about information is, how are you using information? You could use information as another commodity, then it's just still being born out of that industrial culture, or you could try to use information as knowledge, which you're trying to do here, and then we have got something more interesting happening. So I call the next stage post-industrial, post-informational, and as I said earlier, one hopes that the worldview which comes out of such a society is a post-secular spiritual worldview. But when we look at this trajectory of human societies, what we are looking at is that technology is driving the evolution, it's the motor of evolution. And this, I, echoing Shrivala, would call an unconscious form of evolution, because very often than not, we are passive agents of using technology. And the question to ask is there anything as conscious evolution? And I would also just like to make some comments about this term evolution. Sometimes, especially in the Bay Area context, I feel that people use the term evolution to talk about their own individual self-development. But for Auroville, evolution really means the evolution of a species, it means the evolution of human societies. And this is what we're aspiring for. It's not enough to just be enlightened like Buddha. Can we transform an entire society? Can we have a society of enlightened beings? Anyway, so that's the question. Is there conscious evolution? And of course, Shrivala would say yes, and also another thinker and scientist that I studied called Eric Jans. But take a look at the picture. That's the front cover of the UK magazine Punch, a satiric magazine satirizing Darwin's first findings, man is but a worm, back in the... And please know that it says man, it doesn't say anything about women. So Eric Jans is an evolutionary scientist and thinker, and he says society is shaped more by guiding images than by technology. And what we mean by guiding images, like many institutions, I think even CIS has got a vision and mission statement, which gives them a certain direction on how to proceed with this. But to me, guiding images are even more symbolic. They subjectively act on us, they draw us out. As Sean Kelly was saying with those wonderful pictures of the Earth yesterday, these pictures of Earth drew out the ecological consciousness and the global planetary consciousness of the human being since 1968. And guiding images are not prescriptive. You can't easily make laws out of them. it really asks for the individual's participation on how to interpret the images. Very quickly about the picture, I actually had the same picture that Sean Kelly showed about the Earthrise, the Earth just coming out from the moon's surface. Because that picture, the Earthrise, was taken in 1968. This is a later picture, I think 69 or even 72. It is unique because, number one, it's the first picture of the entire Earth. And apparently the conditions of taking a picture of the entire Earth are very spectacular because it's shuttling past it at 20,000 miles or something per hour, and you have to be in the correct position. The second thing about this picture is it is the only picture taken by a human being. The other pictures are all automatic cameras on satellites. But one more interesting anecdotal information about this picture is there were 3 astronauts on that shuttle, and they could not remember who took the picture. And they started to quarrel about it, and that was the end of the friendship. And no. Yeah, you can. I'll send you the Google link where I found this. But again, it points to the fact that, please guys, what are we doing? It's such a privileged moment to actually seeing the Earth like this. And we sink back to egoistic demands. I took the picture, no, I took the picture. And so, unless we have the psychological revolution from within, we cannot really move forward.
They were men too.
I'm sorry.
Men.
Men, yeah. Don't throw me off track. The feminist notions now. Why weren't women in the shuttle? Who prevented them? So what I'd like to share next are texts of the mother which have become, which are guiding images for us. What are Auroville's guiding images? So first of all, these 3 seminal texts, very, very inspiring texts. Yeah, there's just inspirational, you know. We always complain that the mother didn't give us a blueprint on how to develop the city. She left it to us by just giving this text. But I think this was mentioned again earlier. Most Aurovillians who joined Auroville, who felt called to join Auroville, like me, who came there as opposed to Suryamai, who grew up there, often refer to one of these texts and say that this is what to them. Also, our galaxy town plan, I'll talk about that as well. And the concept, which is the concept for today's panel, the concept of spiritual and divine anarchy. And I'll just go into this. Very quickly, just to give you a sense of the charter. So the picture there of those of you who haven't visited Auroville, and you see the Matri Mandir, the gold golden sphere, which is a meditation chamber or concentration, foreigner concentration. And that urn there contains the soil of 125 countries from the Auroville's foundation day. This text is from a text of the mother that she called The Dream. Is that clear enough, or do you want me to read it? What's that? Moving on. And this text also, I believe, has already been mentioned to you or to Auroville. And a quick diagrammatic view of Sri Bindu's idea of the different stages of consciousness. This one is a picture of the model of a town plan. And there's something so dynamic and beautiful about this town plan that people also felt drawn to it. I have friends who came to Auroville just because we had a town plan like this. It has the same shape as our own spiral galaxy. It almost invites you to live in those universal energies to keep the correspondence there. And then divine anarchy is an organizational concept. Suryamai also had touched on this concept in her presentation a little bit. I'll just give you another quote from the mother. The anarchic state is the self-government of each individual And it will be the perfect government only when each one becomes conscious of the inner divine and will only obey, and will obey only her and her alone. Just, anarchy in just the normal everyday sense of the word just means absence of government and full liberty of the individual. But notice Mother is not saying here complete unbridled liberty of the individual. She is talking about liberty moderated by what you're feeling within, by your inner guide, by your inner divine. And she's also not talking about a lack of organization. She is talking about how do we find our own little niche in an ecosystem of in this, like some sort of an intuitive organization. What an ecosystem does automatically, nature does it automatically in an ecosystem, can be moved to a stage in society where everyone finds their place without external powerful hierarchical body trying to organize this. I hope that makes sense. Yeah. So then look at how does divine anarchy play out actually in Auroville. And one of the things is Auroville does not really have leaders, so to say. There's always this rotation of leadership, which is again one of the ideals of the counterculture movement. So for my PhD research, what I asked is I sent out a survey to the community and I asked them, name 3 Aurovillians who by their work or who just by being who they are, you feel are leaders in this community. And the answers, so first of all, and I thought I will count how many votes an Aurovillian gets and that would determine who is a leader. I think I got about 150 responses back, and out of 150 there were only 2 people who came out on the top. One had 11 votes, one had 9 votes. So that was like a sign that there were leaders.
It's a surprising number that some people got 11 votes.
For those of you who know, the person who got 11 votes was Shradhavan from Savitri Bhavan, and Otto got 9 votes. So, and the responses I got was, we have so many leaders, how can I choose only 3? And another one was, sometimes the force, meaning the spiritual force or the divine force is with one and sometimes with the other. So whoever is in chance. The next thing I would like to talk about in terms of looking at how anarchy works is the decision making in Auroville. Let me just give you the quote on that. This is from Mark Kesey, who was an International Advisory Council member. He says you discuss issues endlessly till a decision emerges rather than being taken. And okay, it's a really cumbersome process to go through. But the good thing is that, people then take ownership of the decision. They haven't been sidelined. They have taken part in the decision-making process. And mind you, the other crazy thing of how we try to govern a city is we have no law enforcement agencies. And we have no rules even, we have just guidelines. And we're really relying on people's goodwill to the collective to abide by the rules. So that is why this helps when people feel that they participate in the decision, then they'll take. We do just, in case a decision doesn't emerge, we do take 2/3 majority vote for a decision. Let me just check if there's anything else that I wanted to say about it.
How many decisions require going to that step?
I will let Saura answer that. He will go into the details of how government. I like to give the overview of our ideas. But yeah. So yeah, it's really a participatory democracy. Saura will talk more about our organization and how it stands now. in our internal organization, as you can see, we even do better than CIS in coming up with abbreviations for our acronyms. So we have the FMC for Funds and Assets Management Committee, the CRO Council, and so on. But the thing I want to talk about is divine anarchy is actually very far from being our governing ideal. I've experienced it in small areas of work where things really intuitively flow. But as part of my research, when I asked people, what do you dislike about Auroville? And what came up very strongly, which I call a shadow side of Auroville, is the increasingly bureaucratic setup, government interference, and a really clumsy organization. So just giving you the ideal and the shadow. Moving on, these were the guiding images which just say play a powerful role in guiding evolution. But as we all know, there are always other factors influencing, other factors influencing evolution. The natural environment, I mean, for accepting for the human beings, the natural environment has always shaped the evolution of species. And with the human beings, we also are shaped by a socioeconomic environment and a sociocultural environment. And last but not least, in Chauvin's views of views of conscious evolution, he says that the individual has to be the motor of evolution, has to take responsibility. So if I have time, I'd like to quickly go through this. So the natural environment, this quote was from a forester. I walk through the forest and the land speaks to me, and I know what is to be done. I don't mean that the land actually talks to me, I just intuitively know what to plant where. I should preface this by saying that Auroville has got this green belt of farms and forests, and their ethic has always been, right from the beginning, to have a very, very simple lifestyle. They really embrace the life of voluntary simplicity. So they live without grid electricity, they live on solar energy or wind energy. And actually I've also lived in such conditions. And what happens is, when you are dependent on the sun for meeting your lighting needs or anything, you actually do tune your needs to the sun. If it's a cloudy day or a rainy day, you can't be using a whole lot of power. And so here we are consciously agreeing to be shaped by the natural environment instead of trying to control it. And that, I think, allows for a different form of evolution of consciousness. The socioeconomic environment, I feel capitalism is the bane of all alternative societies. Capitalism is really this evil motor that keeps up eating up resources, human resources, natural resources. And unfortunately, India today, like China, is going through such a capitalistic mode of development. The picture here, which is something Saura has been actively working upon, is highways that are planned in the Auroville, right through the Auroville region, which will just open Auroville up to more capitalistic forces. And yeah, some of us are very well scared. The sociocultural environment, there is of course the community itself, 2,500 people from over 50 countries. And it brings about the sense of communitas. I think human beings are really social creatures. I think we descended from the great apes and we like to bond. So I think community living is a very, very natural form for us. We really don't want this individualized, autonomous units and cities. But also, of course, as you know, we share Auroville with the villages which are always prevalent there. So we also have, cultural interaction for better and worse sometimes. Last but not least, very interestingly, Auroville is also the meeting place of cultures that were historically at war with each other, like the French and the English, the French and the Germans, and also now there are a few Chinese Aurovillians, and we have a very strong Tibetan presence, so that has also actually
Taiwanese?
Yeah. No, but the Tibetan and Chinese, Carlson was telling me about some of
I
the...
mentioned, now there is a big clash between Chinese and Taiwanese.
Oh, Taiwanese. Okay, I haven't met anyone from
It's a
Taiwan.
recent development.
Oh.
last few years.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's really a microcosm of things. Yeah, this last one I could just show you some slides from individual Aurovillians, because as I said, the individual is the motor of evolution. This one I already shared with you yesterday about this young person who told me this is a definition of spirituality. The next one, I'll let you sense to be. Very interesting. Again, I was actually interviewing people in preparation for this talks here and asking what Auroville meant to them. And this woman told me, she said, you know, when I go to Ireland, I almost make it a point to go to my yoga class every day or something. And because I feel I lose connection with the spirit if I don't take up an active practice. But she says in Auroville, it just all flows. It's, you know, there's no separation between life and spirituality. And the picture there, as I mentioned, is from our store, which is a distribution center, where there are no prices on the products. You're welcome to take what you need. A quick look, moving on to the challenges that Auroville faces. First is the danger of spiritual bypassing. It's a very, very thin line about whether somebody is deluded or somebody is actually speaking from the spirit within. Whether you're using spiritual words to bolster your own psychological defenses or whether you're actually evolving. It's very hard to make that call. Regression into religious dogmatism, Debashish already questioned us about it. And Soren, I was saying, luckily, these days, in the last few years, you don't hear too much of that. That mother said this, mother said that, we should behave like that. The dangers of capitalism, I've already mentioned. And these were, again, inferences that I drew from my qualitative dissertation on Auroville. So I took the framework of what's called complex systems. Complex systems comes out from the study of weather patterns, from dissipative open systems. And in that framework, they say an evolutionary system, a system is evolutionary when it produces something new. When there's suddenly new properties which are not earlier noticeable in the system comes forth. I'm seeing some blank faces, so I'll quickly go over. And I realized that Auroville fits in all of those features of complex system. It is complex, which consists of differentiated but interrelated words. And let me not just go into this too much, it will take a bit more time. But Auroville is just a dynamically open system and it actually meets all the requirements of an evolutionary system. That's the transformative. Yeah. I started with Emerson, so I think I'll end with Auroville. He says, break the molds of the past, but keep safe its gains and its spirit, or else thou hast no future. And my point here is that we Aurovillians are not here to try in any way convince you that Auroville has worked it all out, you've got a perfect model. All we're saying is that take some of the Aurovillian spirit and take it to your own lives and see if that helps you in your own development. So the revolutionary adventure continues, and it's also a revolution because, like the revolution at the turn of the wheel, evolution moves through this cyclical path and often seems to take a downturn, but it moves forward. So that's how also I'm playing with the word revolution. And I had to, it did not come out nicely, but I had to added that last night vibe la Auroville in reference to my reference. No, this was, yesterday I was giving a talk about the French revolutionary ideals of fraternity, liberty, and equality, and how that corresponds in Auroville. So, vibe la Auroville. Thank you so much. Before I leave the podium, I'd once again just like to thank Devashish here. He mentioned the idea of this conference a year ago, and since then I've been excited to be here, so very grateful to be here. Also thanks to ABI USA, represented there by Julian Lyons and Wendy, who made it possible for all of us to come. And yes, my friends in East West, old and new, Stephen, Jonathan, Shana, Kat, Taylor, thank you all.